You know, today we're going to be talking about rejection. And I think more than anything, rejection is one topic that continues to come up over and over in our counseling sessions. I would imagine the same with us. You will see more and more people coming through your door that have been rejected for a long period of time. Maybe it started out in their family of origin, and then it just continues. It is insidious because what we're going to be seeing is how rejection breeds rejection. What is rejection? It's when we are shunned. It's when we are determined that we are not worthwhile to someone. They would rather spend time with somebody else or just would rather not spend time with us. Rejection comes in a lot of different forms. It comes from a husband to a wife or vice versa. It comes from a loving friend. It comes from a boss. Sometimes we lose a job, and that is also rejection, when somebody determines that I am not worthy or able to fulfill a position, or simply that I'm not wanted. The person who is rejected is left with all of these feelings of, if only, what if I, what could I have done, what is wrong with me? You know all of this. You've probably walked it through as well. What does it mean to belong? What does that word conjure up in you? It's that we fit. It's that we're comfortable. We're in a haven. Everybody wants us there. Well, most people off and on want us there. And we have a special place that the whole would not operate without your part in it. So many times when children do not feel that they belong in a family, there's no place for them, they're insignificant, they're ignored, they're beaten, they find a place to belong. Sometimes in the community, sometimes in gangs, sometimes on the internet. But we all are creatures that need to belong. That's going to play a big part in rejection, because as we are rejected by those we feel a bonding with and feel like we belong to, that is a huge loss in our lives. Jesus was rejected. It says in the scripture that the stone that was rejected by the builders became the chief cornerstone. Builders, master builders, the ones that are supposed to know stone, rejected this one, and he was foundational. Those who know us best may not know us at all. They may reject us thinking there is no worth in us. And what does God say? Exactly the opposite. Go back and read Romans 8:27-39. It is a beautiful account of how God feels about you, the importance you have to him, and the place that you play not only in his life, but in the world where he has placed you. One of the first things that we do is to take a spiritual temperature. Where are they with God? Where are they with themselves? What is their relationship like with God? We kind of feel like sometimes that he is the God of punishment with that baseball bat, and if we mess up, he attacks us. We don't have anyone, we don't feel like we have anyone, and sometimes that includes him. This is a great place to start building with your client. The scriptures that are mentioned in the keys throughout this key on rejection is a fabulous building ground. It's a fabulous foundational starting place to get your clients to know truth. Scripture states in Romans 12 that we are transformed by the renewing of our minds. All right. Renewing of our minds. That means taking out the old junk that's not getting us anywhere and not benefiting us at all, and replacing it with eternal truth that he says is his purpose for allowing us to suffer. It's obvious and understandable then that rejection can lead to anger. There is always going to be either anger or depression. And remember, depression is me taking it out on me, where anger is typically me taking it out on somebody else. God's desire and his goal always is for freedom, is for victory. And how I think and the faith that I use to walk out my life regardless of how things feel or seem. Allow us to reach that freedom and allow Him the victory in our lives and in our minds. We're going to be looking at 3 things today to help us in that fight, and we're going to continue to bring these up in different ways. First one is a hard one, and it's forgiveness. Forgiving the perpetrator, forgiving the person that has rejected us. And you may have a long list. The second one, as we've talked about, is injecting truth, God's truth, Scripture, promises, those things that He put in the Bible for such a time as this, just to get you and I past that feeling and that thought that we are worthless, that there is nothing good in me, that I hate myself, and onto the plan that He had for me, the reason that He made me, His intention, His purpose for my life. And the last is to give up expectations. It's so hard to do this. If I am still feeling angry, there is some expectation that I still have of someone. Look at the story of Joseph. Let's take him just for a moment. One day, Joseph had gone out to the fields to check on his brothers who were tending the flocks, and they decided to take out all of the hatred that had been building, all of the jealousy, everything that they felt, because Father loved him best. He was the favored son. And so what did they do? You probably know this story. They have this pit. They throw him in the pit. They were going to kill him. They decided not to kill him, but then someone traveling from another country passed by and they saw an opportunity. They sold Joseph to this gentleman who was from Egypt as a slave. So that's where Joseph is. He is in Egypt. He's got a lot of time on his mind. What is he using it thinking about? I know if it were me what I would be thinking about. I'm very grateful that this story didn't happen to me because it may have a totally different ending. But with Joseph, he trusted God. So let's run through just real quickly that AACR and plug it into Joseph's life. What did he have to admit? That this was totally unfair. He had to admit that his brothers hated him, not just rejected, hated him with such a vengeance that they would do this thing. He had to admit that he was away from his father, no cell phones, no Skype, no nothing. He was away from his father, and as far as he knew, would never talk to him again, no way for anyone to find him. He accepted the sovereignty of God. To be real and know where he was in any situation. He accepted God's power to do anything in his life wherever he was. He chose forgiveness. He chose to forgive his brothers. And guys, when we choose that, it's like a gate opens up, the doors open in our mind, and we can have a future. We can think forward. And then he had to release. He released his situation to God. He released his future to God. It's just kind of like opening up your hands and letting God have exactly where you are. This poor, pitiful self, wherever it is exactly where God knew you were going to be. And He has plans from this moment on. As I'm sure that you have experienced or heard from other people, there are things that happen internally when we are rejected. These are kind of what we're calling characteristics of rejection, and one of them is anxiety. It's hard for me to trust. Bitterness towards others and possibly towards God as we see He allowed this situation to happen. Depression. We've spoken about that a little bit earlier, but our hearts are heavy with pain, and it's hard to think of ever feeling any different. Self-pity, feeling we're ignored or not cared about. And then withdrawal. I will never let myself get in that position again. There's also some external ways of seeing when somebody is walking through rejection, through the sadness, the anger of rejection. One is a critical spirit, isolation, people-pleasing, rebellion, and vengeance. You may have seen some of these in your office. You may have seen some of these when you looked in the mirror this morning. I'm afraid I did. But this is when all of the garbage comes out. When we talked about rejection breeding rejection, this is where that fits in. And there is a little circle in your book that shows how that plays out. But as someone rejects me, I feel worthless. As I feel worthless, there is more and more self-hate. As that hatred builds, there are some negative actions in our lives. All of this works as a cycle, and it just continues to go around until I plug in truth instead of those thoughts of rejection going on in my mind. This is what Joseph had to do. This is what we're going to have to do. What are some of the things that God has said? What are some of the promises that He has given you? Who are you as His child? I am completely loved, completely forgiven. He is everything that we need, and He is the supplier of all the needs in our life. Do we believe that? This is kind of, guys, where the rubber hits the road. Because what we're doing is looking rejection straight in the face, and we're saying, I'm not going to take that to heart. I am going to believe what I know to be true, even though it doesn't feel like it. We come to realize that how I live is totally based on what I believe. Our minds are an amazing thing, and God tells us to guard them. Guard your heart and your mind, because as a man thinketh, so is he. So I realize at this point, I have a choice. Life is a series of choices, and this is one that each of us has to make on their own. Do I continue to follow in the way that I feel, or do I begin to walk out in truth, and therefore in every promise that He has given in His Word? There's a woman that comes in, her name is Charla, and this has been her story. From the time that she was small, her father didn't want another child, her mother didn't want another girl, her sister didn't want competition. And so over and over throughout her childhood, Charla was not wanted, and she knew it. When she got older, she was already living that withdrawn kind of victim mentality life. She was the easy mark. She was the ones the kid picked on. As she enters into adulthood, what? Same thing, only worse. Right now, that cute little girl from a long time ago would not be recognized at all. She wears her hair over her face. She always looks at the floor. And she just knows that she is worthless. Because what happened? As she continued to be told that she was worthless and not wanted, she started doing what I think all of us probably do. We substitute it. We feed ourselves with something that makes us feel better. She chose men. Over and over, she would find someone and they would reject her. And she would find someone and they would reject her. And what are we doing? We're just continuing to put bricks on that wall until now, taking all of those bricks off and getting that poor, sweet little girl out from behind that wall of rejection and anger and hatred towards herself and bitterness towards so many people is a long work, but she's willing to do it. Where have we seen this in the Bible as well? Sometimes the Lord allows us to feel rejected when we're not at all. Let's look at Joseph again real quickly. Did Joseph have the type of character when he was young that God needed for his assignment? God's assignment of Joseph was what? If you read on through the story, you realize that after being in the dungeon, then being in the palace, and being back in the dungeon again for a period of years, that the king had a dream. And Joseph was the only one that could interpret the dream. And he interpreted it correctly. And because of that, the king put Joseph over all of Egypt, except for the palace. His throne was the only thing that Joseph did not have responsibility over. That takes a lot of character. It takes a lot of integrity. God needed a man of character when he was going to put Joseph in charge of all of Egypt. God had a plan to allow Joseph humility, to allow him trust, to allow him to know that we have no control over this life, but God does, and he can be trusted. One thing that we have to just believe, he is a God of love. He loves you more than you love yourself. He cares for you and wants for you better than you want for yourself. So as we can see with Joseph, three basic reasons why we are rejected is because of something that we have done, something that someone has done to us, or who we are. You know, there is that progression of rejection, that first someone does something to me and I don't deserve it. And then I do something and I do deserve the rejection. And then because I hate myself for doing such a thing, I add on either alcohol or relationships or some kind of substitute for really processing the pain and allowing God to take the pain. This is typically when we see people after they have gotten deep into a substitute. You may have the same thing in your office, that what we see coming in is simply the knee-jerk reaction. It's the bubble up from the cause of the rejection, from the initial rejection. It is so necessary, obviously, to know somebody's story so we can see past the habit they have started having to really what the true hurt is. I have a client that has just been told by her fiance that he fell out of love with her. She is really doing a lot of work and has a lot of pain because of the breakup of this relationship. What is true, however, is that that fiance has been leading a secret life, and that he, for years before he even met her, could only find happiness with being with one woman after another after another. He felt that when he met her, that part of his life was over. It was not. The guilt has built up to a level that he just finally went and broke it off with her, and the only thing that he could think of to say that would cut it off completely is that he fell out of love with her. Obviously, she's been trying to figure out what is wrong with me, how can I get him back, why doesn't he love me anymore, what did I do, all of this. And this just kind of pinpoints the whole insidious nature of rejection, is that so much of the time the fault is not even ours and we are carrying it around. What is a core belief? A core belief is a statement that I have about me or the world, that in my reality it is absolute truth. These core beliefs can attach to us typically so many times, and unfortunately they are negative. Something negative that I know that is true about me. These are formed as I continue the thought of my rejection, and over and over and over, and I am a person who deserves to be rejected, and all of a sudden that is my core belief about myself, and nothing anyone else can say, no proof can allow me to change that belief that I am rejectable and I am deserving of rejection. As I continue this way of thought, I start building a pathway in my brain. It's called a neural pathway, and I know a lot of y'all have already heard about this and know about this, but for those that don't, as I think a thought, it starts a line in my brain, a crease. The more I think that thought, the deeper the crease gets. It becomes a pathway, kind of like in a cornfield. And the corn is high, and you've got this one path you can walk, or you'll get lost in the field. We kind of have to cut a new pathway. We kind of have to give our client a machete and allow them to start building a new pathway, start cutting a new thought, a new way of thinking in their brain. Because if left on our own, all of our thoughts just flow into the rut of that one thought. I am rejectable. I am deserving of rejection. One thing that we do here with clients coming in with such a strong negative core belief is walk out with them who caused the rejection. Typically, we take it by individual and maybe start with a parent. Let's just say a father for right now. Every act of rejection, every pain, everything that they can remember that dad did while they were growing up that caused deep hurt, we write out. We also realize that there are things that we do in response to being hurt. There are habits we take on. We've already talked about that. We list those out. How she felt or he felt each time dad did something, we list those out. And then, one by one, as they have made a list of what has been painful, how they felt about it at the time, and then consequently what they did to relieve that pain, we go one by one and we determine that that was then and this is now. That can be such a powerful statement. That was then. There's a period to that. It doesn't have to be carried forward any longer. We can leave that in the past. That was then, period. This is now. This is a time of rebirth. This is a time of starting over and starting fresh. This is a time of walking out the truth of God's promises instead of the reality of rejection. I know so many times, years after the fact, we can see why God did something. When we're right in the middle of it, it is very hard to see from another perspective except that of pain. Being thankful for everything is what James admonishes us to do in the Bible. And I think we need to draw back to that. Be thankful. When we're right in the middle of the pain, it has to be in faith, because there is nothing to be thankful for. But we know that we know there is a reason, and it is a good reason, and it is out of love. And therefore, in faith, without understanding, I can thank Him for my situation and the pain that I am feeling right now, because it's going to bring me to the place He wants me. The last part of the steps to solution is reaching out to others, replacing that feeling of rejection with reaching out, doing for someone else. So many times when we're right in the middle of the pain, almost always, all we can see is this right here. It is so very hard to see the hurt and the pain of somebody else. The last thing that we're going to be working through in this section is that this is now a time to reach out to others. So much has been done to your client. So much has been done to us. And we can get totally immersed in all about me and my pain and my suffering. And it's very hard for us to even see that somebody else right across from us is suffering as well. June has even put in here some conversation starters. I love that. If we have a hard time knowing what to say to somebody to start a conversation, we kind of feel like somebody is exhibiting some of those characteristics of rejection. How do I get them to talk? What can I say? How can I start a conversation? It's in here. We don't even have to think about it. Overall, we can't change anybody. We can't change what has happened in their past. We can't change how they feel about it. We can't change the choices that they have made for a little bit of peace and happiness because of their pain. We don't have any power to change anyone. What we can do is offer. We can offer truth. We can offer a life that has walked this out to allow them to follow you. As you are looking at your page of the scenario that you wrote down, please consider walking out each step that we've gone over today. And then you can take somebody else through this without feeling the responsibility of their change. That is totally on them, just like it is totally on you. But they do have a choice now, and that's what we do. We offer them a choice before they may not have any idea what to do except continuing to feel as bad as they feel, continuing to think that there is no hope, continuing to think that it is their fault. Now they have a whole different way of thinking if they so choose. I am glad that you're there and you're working with them. More than that, I am glad that you're there and you're praying for them. They need your prayers as well as your help.